I think in terms of spending cuts, there's a lot of programs that we can tighten our belt on for sure. But I think that the way that Republicans have gone about it with this sledgehammer approach, without prudent, responsible hearings, without prudent and responsible digging into the programs that work and that don't work. I mean, there's a vast amount of programs that are paid for in the United States government. I certainly wouldn't put $45 billion on a wall that's not going to work. I'm for a balanced budget. I think we need a responsible budget in this country. We cannot continue adding to our deficit. We're heading down a financial crisis. Our credit rating has already been lowered. And so we absolutely need to come together. But doing all of this, having all this pain on the American people solely so that about 1,000 people can have a tax break is irresponsible and is not good governance and it's not fiscally sound, in my opinion.
Dallas Congresswoman Julie Johnson on the big bullshit bill from CBS Texas. It's Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. Since we last got together, that massive travesty of a bill has passed the U.S. Senate. Susan Collins of Maine ended up siding with Rand Paul and Tom Tillis and voting no. The look on Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski's face right after casting the decisive vote for a bill that she knows full well will destroy thousands of vulnerable lives in her state is emblematic of the degree to which Republicans in Congress have chosen to sell out their constituents in order to avoid the wrath of Donald Trump. And I'm sure folks up there are furious this morning. Murkowski's yes vote made it 50-50, and Vice President J.D. Vance broke the tie. Alaska, don't forget this one. Definitely less surprising, but with even more impact on far more families, the much more enthusiastic votes in favor of the bill by Texas Senators John Cornyn and Ted Cruz, who don't appear to have worried a whole lot about the millions of Texans whose health care and food assistance will be in jeopardy. The Associated Press says a similar sprint is now on in the U.S. House. Voting starts, now, essentially, as Trump's minions continue to pursue the artificial deadline of July 4th, Friday, for the bill's final passage as dictated by the dear leader. And once again, there are currently 3 vacant seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, all due to the deaths of Democrats, including Houston's Sylvester Turner, all at a moment when that 3-vote Democratic disadvantage will almost certainly make a disastrous difference for our country. A Texas Republican for the moment represents resistance to the bill, and that's Congressman Chip Roy, who's not worried about poor folks going hungry or dying from easily preventable diseases. To the contrary, he's worried about the deficit, which indeed the big bullshit bill will pile on $3.3 trillion over the next decade. Roy's solution won't be reductions in the tax breaks the bill has in mind for millionaires and billionaires. He's going to want even deeper cuts to Medicaid, CHIP, or anything else that serves our most vulnerable, and chances are he's going to get those cuts. The more Republicans gouge the American people in general, the more their own voters in rural Texans will feel the pain. An op-ed in the Houston Chronicle points out that much of rural Texas is already a healthcare desert, with more than 20 rural hospitals going belly up over just the last 15 years. Hospitals that were more burdened than their urban counterparts because more of their patients lacked insurance, a problem that the big bullshit bill is about to make a lot worse by closing a loophole that Texas has used to maximize federal subsidies for hospitals. Trump voters out in the country are about to get what they voted for. The Chronicle notes that the bill as it stands, again, before the likes of Chip Roy make it even worse, will spell a financial gain for the top 1% of taxpayers of around $30,000 in annual income, while the poorest Americans will lose about $700 a year. It's a high price in human suffering, but if there's a silver lining here, all this pain is likely to come home to roost for Republicans in the fall of 2026. The race for the seat of the aforementioned John Cornyn is heating up here in Texas. Cornyn appears all but cooked in the polls, but his legendary fundraising skills appear to be largely intact. Ben Jacobs at Politico writes that Texans for a Conservative Majority, the super PAC supporting Cornyn in his primary challenge from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, raised over $10.9 million in the quarter after Paxton declared for that seat. That PAC will have over $12 million in cash on hand after the current fundraising quarter. That's a lot of money to blow through even before engaging the general election, and is also an indication that there are lots of influential Republicans out there who do not want to see Ken Paxton sitting in the U.S. Senate. Meanwhile, I spent some time early this morning digging through the comment sections on several social media platforms to try and get a read on how Texas Democratic voters are reacting to the campaign announcement of former Congressman Colin Allred, which came early yesterday, and I'd say lackluster would be putting it kindly. This isn't MAGA trolling. This is feedback from what appear to be progressive Texans, including a lot of criticism of the style of Allred's opening announcement materials, which focus heavily on the candidate's football career and don't appear to diverge much from what he was doing in the early phase of his run against Ted Cruz just last year, which of course he lost by almost 1 million votes and 8.5 percentage points. There's still a long way to go, but right now would be a good time for Colin Allred's campaign management to review the definition of insanity. Our executive director, Kathleen Thompson, has popped up in a couple of interesting places this week. First, in a new piece done by our friend Stephen Monticelli for the Barbed Wire on New York City mayoral primary winner and likely future mayor Zoran Mamdani, and what a big win for a progressive upstart against an establishment figure like Andrew Cuomo means for the rising progressive wave here in Texas. It's a great read, including Kathleen's input. Quote, "I think the lesson is young people are motivated if they're turned on by a candidate and turned on by public policy that really speaks to them. And in Texas, the economic messaging is the same. Whether you're in Houston or Dallas or San Antonio, it's so expensive. The last time Texas raised the minimum wage was 2009, and it's $7.25 an hour. That's a joke. I think a Texan who runs on economic values and fairness and equality for all could do well in our major cities, but also our rural areas. There are lots of folks in rural Texas who rely on minimum wage jobs, who rely on their neighborhood public schools to lift them out of poverty," unquote, and totally. And a blast from the past linked in the show notes. We've told you about Republican and Patriot Mobile executive Lee Wamsgans, who's recently declared for the Texas Senate, apparently with some authority, as Fort Worth House Rep Nate Schatzline immediately cowered and withdrew his own declaration for the same seat. Well, Kathleen faced off with Wamsgans all the way back in 2008 when the Republican nominee for vice president was Sarah Palin. Hilarious now to watch Wamsgans tell DFW TV viewers to ignore the polls about Sarah Palin. Kathleen Thompson has been taking down MAGA since before they even knew they were MAGA. See the show notes for that video. This week leading up to the 4th of July on Friday, we're hitting the road with Progress Texas Summer Vacation. Watch our social media feeds today for more from Advocacy and Development Coordinator Tatum Owens, who's still traveling up in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, getting a firsthand look at the impact of Donald Trump's budget cuts for our national parks. See the show notes for a rundown from Common Cause, warning vacation travelers of closed trails, overflowing trash, and barely any rangers on duty, which of course leads to significant safety concerns in the parks. Common Cause says DOJ is slashing funding for over 350 national park sites right in the middle of peak season, while billionaire donors cash in on tax breaks. And now, Trump wants to slash over $1 billion in funding from public lands just as millions of Americans plan their summer visits. See the show notes and our socials for more. Our mission at Progress Texas is to counter the conservative disinformation machine, which is funded by oil and tech billionaires and religious right-wing activist groups, all while fact-based independent media outlets increasingly face threats to their funding. While access to those outlets is frequently free, as it is here at Progress Texas, it does take listener support to keep fact-based independent media going. If you've come to appreciate what we do at Progress Texas, now more than ever, we could use your support as a monthly contributor, and no amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks to Emily Evans, Stephanie Evans, and Bart Ewald, all three of whom are on the team. We appreciate all of y'all very much. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning.